We are so lucky at One Rental at a Time to have the one and only Lance Lambert from Resi Club here to talk with us each week. He brings the heat, the data, the variables, and the conversations that are moving the needle in real estate. We're going to talk about a specific article in Fast Company where we talk about the growth in days on market. We talk about the growth in price cuts, and we do a comparison of inventory growth over 5 years. Folks, this is the definition of knowing your buy box. If you want to know where there's pain, you got to know where to look. Lance, what do you got?
Housing, housing, housing. Thank you so much for having me this week, Zuber. Let me pull up the story real fast. Give me a second. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Awesome. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I did a piece recently for my Resi Club Pro audience, which is my premium tier that gets 3 additional articles per week, access to my tracker. But I decided to make this one because I thought it was so important. I shared it on Fast Company so people could kind of see, get a taste for what Pro looks like at Resi
Yep.
Club, and then really just this important data. And so the first chart is days on market by metro.
Mm,
And the bubble size is by population.
okay.
So you see like LA's bigger, or sorry, it's not population. It's by number of active homes for sale.
That
So
would make
right
sense.
now, Miami has far more homes for sale than Chicago or Los Angeles, despite not having as big of a population as
Got
LA.
it.
And then the color is by days on market. So
Ooh,
if you have 20 days, you're darker blue. If you have up to 80 days, you're darker red. And this is days on market as calculated by realtor.com. And the thing
mhm,
about days on market is that every source tracks it different. Is it days on market for what's actively for sale? Is it days on market for what's sold? And
mm,
so I have the methodology in there if you're interested. But
awesome.
generally, what we're seeing is that days on market. I'll show you where I live, Cincinnati. It's at 29. That's just only up a little since the bottom of the pandemic housing boom, 24,
Right.
22 days, and
Yeah.
still, well below the 42, 45 pre-pandemic levels. And so the Northeast and Midwest still fairly tight. A lot of the West Coast, despite
That
even a few of them.
that's surprising. Look at California. I mean, you would have thought,
Yeah.
but it's actually blue and some even dark blue. Yeah. Look at
Yeah.
Fresno, 37.
The one difference about some of the West Coast areas is that while they're still low, they have seen a bigger increase in the number, right?
Mhm. Yeah, for
So
sure.
Cincinnati, if you go back to Cincinnati, it's barely up, right?
Right.
It
Hmm.
only got as low as 22, 24 days. So Fresno, while it's not very high, it got as low as 16 days.
I
Uh,
remember.
it,
Yeah.
it got
So we're up
very
100% from there. Yeah.
yeah. So you're up more, but you're still a little bit below pre-pandemic levels for the months for the days on market.
Yeah.
And really where you see it the highest right now is in parts of Florida. Now I will say that a lot of these markets in Florida have seen higher days on market historically. So look
Mm,
at Northport. So it's 85, 94 pre-pandemic. So it was already
mm,
kind of but you did see the pretty big burst upward,
right.
which is so with this one, I think it does show more weakness in the Gulf. But it's not one of my favorite charts.
Yeah,
I
well, yeah.
actually
The other thing that chart kind of shows me is it is very much about a buy box city area. Much of the country is still, you know, still okay. That's what that kind of shows.
yeah. And these next two, you'll kind of see some of that picture again.
Okay.
So this chart is again sized by active listings, but it is change in active listings since pre-pandemic. So if you're the
Oh.
dark brown, you're really far below pre-pandemic levels.
So
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 in
so Chicago is 65% below 2019.
correct. In
Wow.
June 2019, and I'm going to update this over the weekend with new data, there was 39,000 active listings for sale. It's only at about 14,000 now for active inventory. It's actually gotten tighter since the height of the pandemic housing boom. They had 17,000.
Yeah.
Now there's 15,000. They actually got tighter.
Yeah.
Uh,
Rates went up, 100%, and it got tighter. Talk
yeah,
about a busted or broken housing market. My goodness.
crazy housing market. It is so much regional variation across the
Mm.
country. And then really the tightest area in the country is Connecticut and then New Jersey.
Mm.
And what it is the donut effect out of New York City.
Right.
And so people are kind of trying to chase affordability. They're no longer doing as many of the moves like to Colorado Springs or Idaho, like really far out of New York. But they're trying to get to places where they can, if they need to come into the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week, they can
Mhm.
do it. So they're going deep, deep exurbs. And so there's a donut effect around major metropolitan areas right now were the deep, deep exurbs of the major metros, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and true in other parts of the country as well. The deep, deep exurbs are fairly hot still. And then Texas, parts of Louisiana, and around the Gulf into Florida, that's where actives have built more. And
Yeah.
so Austin has 41% more active inventory than, and these are metros, not just cities, than pre pandemic. And then Waco, 45% above. Dallas is still a little bit below pre-pandemic levels, and
Mm.
that's really the core four counties of the metro. A little more urban, suburban. Those have stayed a little warmer. The deep exurbs outside of Dallas, if I did county level data, you would show there's more weakness where a lot of the home buildings happened.
Yeah.
Punta Gorda is the weakest in Florida. Uh, and you'll see that Tampa is now above pre-pandemic levels, 11% above.
Yeah.
Orlando, 8% above pre-pandemic levels. Um, Jacksonville just hit pre-pandemic levels. Panama City is above by a good
Mm.
amount. Pensacola is above. But some of these other major markets, Atlanta's still 30% below pre-pandemic
Wow.
levels. There's 20,000 active listings. There was about 30,000 pre-pandemic.
Mm.
Um, I actually think this might be a month where I got some bad data for Phoenix. Every once in a while, Phoenix and Las Vegas will have funky data from the
Mm.
data providers. I think Phoenix is actually above pre-pandemic levels,
Okay.
unless the data is right and they had a sudden drop in June, but I don't know if that actually
Okay.
happened.
Yeah.
And California is still fairly tight. Let's get your buy box.
There you go.
Uh,
Yep.
41% below pre-pandemic level.
Yeah, it's still wild. And again, I know the buy box pretty well. The thousand listings we have now, it's still very, very bifurcated. A lot of that's above the median stuff that's just sitting and sitting and sitting. So it's pretty wild to watch.
I I think there's something true about Fresno, but when I see the next map, I will tell you if it is true. So let's go to prices now.
Okay.
And this is year over year change in prices. What you will see is that most of the country is rising. National aggregates are still up. The Gulf is where you will see most of the weakness. This
Yeah.
is kind of what gets a lot of the media coverage.
Hmm.
But we're not talking about huge drops. We're talking about, mild declines. Just like a lot
Hmm.
of the increases are mild increases, a lot of the places that are falling are kind of like mild declines. Um, this one is done as 5 year change, 4 year change, 3 year, 2 year, 1 year. And
Got it.
so you'll see Austin, they're down 8%, 18% on a 2 year basis, but on a 5 year basis, they're still up 46%.
Wow.
Uh, Phoenix, they've been a little choppier, so they're down about 6.9% on 2 year basis, but now up 3% year over year,
Hmm.
but they're still 62% zoomed out.
Yeah.
Now I want to go, and so the tightest area of the housing market, if you look at these three charts, it's the Northeast and Midwest, and
Yeah.
then Southern California, I would say, are the tightest pockets. And there's some other patches here and there in the Southeast and other parts of the West Coast, but really the tightest parts of the market, Midwest, Northeast, especially the deep exurbs, and then
Yep.
Southern California. And most of the weakness, although you can find patches in the Mountain West, it's really the Gulf, the
Right.
where there's a lot of home building and where they're getting hit by the home insurance shocks.
Yep.
Let's look at Fresno. Uh, okay, so my theory was right with Fresno. Fresno's up 5.1% year over year, which is just 1% above the national average. But
Mhm.
if you look at Fresno, when it comes to days on market, inventory relative now to pre-pandemic, and prices, it's really right at the center of the national average. It's
Yep.
pretty much, if you had to pick a market that was like really good to give a proxy for where the average is for the US right now, Fresno is actually a really good example.
I love it.
Um, and actually for the 5-year change, up 47.5%, that's about where the national number is as well. Which for you as an investor is good because you you don't always want to be the big outlier market.
No, I've been there before. If you go back and look at Fresno specifically, 2004 and 2005, it was the number one market in the country back to back. And then it had a 75% crash. So no, I don't want to be the number one market. I'm happy sitting right in the middle.
And so if you want to see the story and play with the data, I this is a paywalled story on Resi Club, but if you go to Fast Company, I allowed them to republish this one.
That's
So
awesome.
Google Lance Lambert Fast Company, and the second story on my author page, you will find this. Or you could just type in the housing market and shift is shifting. Here is where it is happening.
Folks, you
Um,
you got to follow the people that have the data, the experience that aren't swayed by political opinions. He just brings the data. That's what you get with Resi Club. I'm so glad you gave this to Fast Company. It's just a highlight of what all the goodness that you bring your community. So thank you for that. I also know you had a conversation with KB Home CEO. Did I hear that right?
That is right. Talked to KB Home CEO, and I just published that story on Fast Company, or not on Fast Company, Resi Club. So let me go pull that piece.
I like to hear from KB Homes because I really consider them of the publicly traded home builders kind of oriented to first time home buyers. That's at least my opinion. I don't
Yeah,
hopefully
and
Jeffrey's
yeah,
not mad at that.
that sounds about right. And the interesting thing about their CEO, Jeffrey Mesger, if I'm pronouncing that right, which I'm terrible at pronouncing last names, by the way. He was actually the CEO back in 2006. So he's,
Ooh, so he's came into the teeth of this. Yeah.
yeah, he has seen just about everything. And so I like talking to him, and he's very
Yeah.
frank. Just tells you exactly how he sees it. He acknowledges this market is affordability challenged, but he says it's a very different backdrop than 2008.
Hmm.
And here, let me read the quote from him. In spite of all the blur and the affordability and the noise and the inventory and everything in the media, underneath that, people want to be homeowners. And so we're seeing that. We sold 5.5 homes a month per community last quarter. It's one of the
Wow.
highest in the company's history.
In history.
In history, yeah. Yes. Their home sales rate is
Wow.
very high.
It's crazy.
And the underlying reason he believes is that essentially for new construction, the market's been undersupplied for about 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
And we just haven't caught up to the underbuilding for single family homes during and following the great financial crisis. That's his big picture look at the market. So even though the affordability strained, he says there's just not enough homes out there. And affordability is a challenge, but the outlook for housing demand is still strong. You have these two cohorts, the millennials and Gen Zs, 150 million between the two that want to be homeowners.
Mm.
And so it is a question of how do you solve that? Oops, flipped. How do you connect the dots of affordability and the right location and the right price for them? Really, a lot of what you've been saying, which is you can find the market out there at a certain
Hmm.
price. You will find the market for these millennials, Gen Zers, these first
Yeah.
time buyers. And so it's a question of having the right product for them. He says that they've actually done a better job in terms of addressing affordability
Mm.
because of their built to order approach. And it's not necessarily like smaller homes, but it's also just like not getting as expensive of appliances, right?
Right.
Like there's other ways that a buyer can help to address their affordability for somebody who's not doing as because they're built to order. You're pretty much customizing what you
Yep.
want from them.
Yeah.
Total incentives, they spend about 2% of revenue on
Oh,
mortgage.
wow. That's much lower than I expected.
Yeah, it's gone up a little bit over the past year, but many of their peers, he said, are 6, 7, 8, 9% of revenues
Mm.
on session. A part of that is because of the built to order approach.
Sure. Sure.
And then some of it is because they just decided out of the gate in some of the communities where need to be, they would just rather cut on price, which they're kind of an outlier for that.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much in a few places, in particular Denver. Not that Denver is like a super weak market over the past 2 years in the resale side, but on the new home side, he said that their premiums, the difference between new construction cost and resale got out of whack. And
Oh,
so homes, new construction was more vulnerable to affordability adjustments in Denver,
makes
he said.
sense. Makes sense.
It's just because prices went up so high so quickly. And here's net orders there. You'll see KB still selling. You know, there's not this huge drop off.
Mhm.
Actually, the only time they saw a huge drop off was that one lockdown quarter,
Yeah, of course. If you
which makes
stop the world from moving, they're going to sell less homes.
yep,
That's
exactly.
how that works.
And then here's their quarterly gross margin.
Much better than
Still
I
picked
expected.
up above pre-pandemic levels. Of course, soared to historic highs during the pandemic, and they've compressed some, but still elevated.
Now,
Uh,
let me ask you a question because again, you talk to these guys, home builders, a lot. Given that rates have now come down, I think you reported them today at 6.62. Is it fair to say that rate concessions or buy downs would actually reduce? Because again, I think we've seen builders have to get to like 4.99 or 5%.
so
I'm guessing.
we're asking one of the toughest questions because what I have noticed, and I don't have a great amount of aggregate data on this, I just
Okay.
have anecdotal data.
Okay.
But I watch a few homes, especially Lennar's offerings in Colorado. And
Okay.
what you will usually see is that as rates move up or rates move down, the rate that they're buying down moves with the rates.
Interesting.
So,
Okay. That
so
makes
if it
sense.
goes down 50 basis points, they go down 50 basis points. If it goes up 50 basis points, they go up 50 basis points. The one exception was the last fall when we got 8% rates
Yeah.
that very briefly, the builders had to actually go even more. So instead of just being at 1% below the market, they were like 1.5. And
Yeah, that's
so,
that's when Olivia and I bought, and we actually it was right around 8%. We got all the way down to 4.99 was
wow.
the buy
Yeah.
we got. Yeah.
So, so they swing with the market, but when
Okay.
rates have gone up really high, they've had to increase to continue to move product. But
Got
there
it.
is a
That makes
question
sense.
if rates go, like if rates are down to 5.5, do builders then go to 3.8? Like, do they just keep their advantage over resale? Because at this point, it's essentially built into the price almost.
That's actually a really good point because if
So
they
it's
gave that back and got a fatter margin, then they become almost even with existing, which
yeah.
they probably don't want. I think you're right.
Yeah. So that the reason I bring that up is you see them move with rates. They're essentially trying to keep their advantage over the
Correct.
retail market.
That
And
makes
at this
total sense.
it's not like in a net effective price cut at this point because it's baked in. It's
Yeah.
already occurred.
Well, I mean, their margins are still very healthy. So
The
yeah,
only
I
time
think you're right.
the only time it becomes a net effective cut is if you have 8% rates again,
Yeah.
and you have to spend more
Right.
on the
Yeah.
uh
Well, let's hope 8% rates are behind us. That was fun for no one.
so KB Home is keeping an eye on Florida, which is where actives have kind of moved up more. It's the market where there is real weakening and cooling across
Mhm.
many pockets of Florida. But, they want to point out that, most of Florida is still below 6 months of supply.
Hmm.
So Tampa, for example, has gone from 1.8 months to 3.6. Although you and me, who studies the market very closely right now, knows maybe you don't need the six. Maybe
No,
it's
that's
4.5.
it's more like 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do think it's an
Yeah.
interesting point. He says they're watching it. They haven't seen a significant impact on Florida sales yet.
Okay.
Although during the earnings call, the one of the other executives suggested that because what you are seeing, that you will start to probably see some of it. But
Makes
if you
sense.
look at the data for Florida, what you will see is that the weakest part of Florida is condos, in particular coastal condos.
Yep.
And then from there, it's the existing market. And
Yep.
then the strongest is actually new construction. And I have a theory on it that Ali Wolf gave me, which is that new construction in Florida actually has, according to her, I don't know if I haven't verified this, but she said it has lower home insurance premiums than a similar existing home. I don't know if
That would make total sense to me. Yes.
that's what she said.
Yeah. I
So,
like Allie. I'm going to believe her. I'm going to believe
and the
Allie.
other thing is where builders are building is a bit less of the coastal condo market, right?
Right.
So there's that factor as well, that their product's a bit different. But you are seeing in some of these new construction communities, they have had to have cuts in terms of like Punta Gorda, at least I know.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten that directly from a builder, but based on the evidence I've seen.
Yeah, the evidence looks pretty significant. Well, the other thing I think you talked to American Homes for Rent. Did that also happen here
Well,
recently?
let's go through KB because I
Oh,
got some
sorry.
stuff.
Oh,
So,
more stuff.
strongest markets, he says Las Vegas and Inland Empire. And despite all the media talk about Las Vegas, he says for them, at least uh, uh, because of their price points they're operating at,
Hmm.
they're actually doing really good in Las Vegas.
There's a couple of KB home communities I've driven by as I'm learning buying Vegas, and yeah, they're fairly active. They're at a price point that would make sense that KB is doing well in Vegas.
He says that big builders are indeed going to continue to take market share from smaller builders.
For sure,
This
no
is the
question.
market share controlled by, this is the market share of new home closings by publicly traded builders.
Mhm.
So in 2006, when he took over at KB Home, publicly traded builders made up 26% of the market. Before the pandemic started, it was 37%. And now that rates have shot up, it's 51. Ali Wolf thinks it's going to 60%.
Ooh, wow, that's a call. I love that. Okay.
And so he says what it is, we're taking share from two sources. One is small builders that are having difficulty with financing.
Yep.
Banks are very conservative right now on what they'll lend a builder to develop lots. But you are also taking share from resale because of limited inventory. That's a direct quote from him.
Yeah,
Makes
for sure.
sense. This is a chart for prices of builders. Some of this drop that you'll see since peak is just mix shift
Yep.
or geographic shift. So if you sell more homes in a lower cost market, it will shift your price, right?
Yep. Of
So
course.
so mix shift is both on size of homes and geographical. Their average sales price is 483.
Mhm.
So they're kind of in the middle of the pack. LGI is 360. Notable, they're the lowest price builder. They have also are the only builder that the average has not come down since the peak, which
Interesting.
probably speaks to that they're where the market is, right?
Yep.
And
Makes
Toll
sense.
Brothers, of course, of the big builders I track, they're kind of like the luxury builder,
Yeah.
dollar average.
Makes sense.
What would it take for new home prices to fall further? He says what the barometer we'll keep our eye on is inventory levels. If months of supply start to tick up in a hurry, you'd stop raising prices and start focusing on selling homes. He said, heading forward, it wouldn't surprise me if the economy cooled off a little from here, but I think the strength in demand and the demographics more than offset that. So we're pretty bullish and excited right now on where things are headed. Uh, and so that's KB Home's take on the
I
housing
love
market.
I love that. I love how you get the insights. Not only do you have the historical data, you keep it up to date, but you all have access to CEOs like this. That is amazing. Again, I think you did talk to American Homes for Rent this last
Yeah,
week or so.
get to that. This is a premium story, so this one is actually just for my Resi Club Pro paying members. But I was able to speak with American Homes for Rent, which they now just want to be called AMH. They don't want to be
Oh,
called
okay.
American
My bad.
Rent.
AMH.
which I didn't know, but they corrected me. So that's what they want now. And we talked about their strategy. And so going back to the great financial crisis, they were one of those institutional players that was kind of early, and
Mhm.
they swooped in at the very bottom of the market,
I
and they
remember.
got a lot of great discounts. So this home at 825 Peaceful Woods Street in Las Vegas, they bought it for 102,000,
Mm.
102K, right?
Wow.
That was 65% below the 296 the previous owner bought it for in October 2000. So AMH got it in 2012 and 65% below its
Yeah.
October 2004. And that again, this is kind of like with the Fresno, the
Mhm.
Phoenix, Vegas really got hit. And
It did.
this is all the way at the desert edge in the northwest corner of Las
Yep.
Vegas. According to Zillow, now it's worth 425,000. So the homes went up 300%. During the
Mm.
same time frame, inflation's went up around like 35%. So 300% gain versus 35% inflation. And oh, by the way, in 2017, it rented for $1,300. It
Mhm.
was $2,000 last year,
Yeah.
on a house that they only paid 102,600. So I would call that a bargain buy indeed. But those deals are long gone, right? Those are
Mhm.
gone out of the market. You can't get those. So AMH has shifted its acquisition strategy less from buying up scatter homes and
Yeah.
more of let's just build our home, build the whole communities, right?
I think that's a genius move for folks like AMH because again, when you're buying at discounts, you can do scatter and scale, but when the market turns like it is now, you've got to create your own value. So you go build the entire community. Makes total sense.
Exactly. And it's, it's just harder to manage the
Mhm.
scatter
Oh yeah,
portfolios. I mean, they have 59,000 homes. So, and now 10,000 of those are built to rent. The other 39, you're spending more on your operations.
well for sure.
Uh,
They're also older homes, right? The beauty of build for rent is they're all brand new, so a lot of that capital
and,
expenses
and
get pushed out.
And the other thing is even little things like a rental lead. So if you get a rental lead on a property that's scatter, it's just on that one home, right?
Correct.
If you get it on a build to rent community and you have more leads,
Yeah.
then you have more to fill, right? So the
Yep.
lead, so even little things, the maintenance, the acquisition, all that stuff.
Yep.
And
Totally agree.
so what AMH did, and starting back in 2017, is they created their own home builder.
Mhm.
So unlike some of these other build to rent where they're teaming up with Pulte Group or DR Horton or Lennar, AMH
Wow.
created its own home builder. And
Wow.
so now,
They went vertically integrated.
yes, they're the
I
39th largest home builder in the US,
I had
AMH.
no idea. Wow.
And so they've now built 10,000 homes built to rent. Only like 40 of those have been sold off to other places. So they pretty much own all of
Kept
them.
them. Yep.
They have another 10,000 in their build to rent pipeline.
That's amazing.
And so now they have three strategies. One is the scatter buying, which they did increase during the pandemic housing boom because rates got so low and all that. It made
Sure.
sense. Rents were soaring. Let's go get some of these homes. They're appreciating so fast. The
Mm,
build to rent, which is now their biggest acquisition arm. And then they also will every once in a while buy some homes from builders.
nice.
But the point of having three different strategies is that wherever the market is at, you can scale up or scale down based
No,
on
I think
where
that's a
the
I think that's
opportunity.
a genius move because again, you have all the legs of the stool and you just take advantage of where you are. I mean, you could in theory think of a way where building really slows down and then they just go buy from distressed builders, right? They go, okay, we'll buy the last 40 homes at some discounted price. It makes total sense.
And so his bullish outlook on build to rent and then single family is he says America's woefully underbuilt for housing, certainly a need for the millennial generation. They're in their household formation years. He also highlighted that, a lot of the bears will take the fact that prices and rents are kind of out of whack
Mhm.
is very bearish, right?
Yep.
He's looking at it as from bullish. He's saying that the wide gap, the fact that a lot of households would have to pay 800, 1,100 more on a monthly mortgage payment versus rent, actually attracts some of those households who are price sensitive to
Yeah.
single family rentals, right?
He's right. I see it in my portfolio. Absolutely.
And they mostly just build they only build 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom, usually 4 bedrooms, 1,800 to 1,200 or
Oh,
2,100 square
that's a
feet.
perfect size. Yeah, makes sense.
They, a few of the reasons they do build to rent: control over quality, design, and product. You're picking exactly what you want, where you want it. Scalability, to scale their operations more efficiently, and long-term thinking. You're
Yeah,
developing new communities in strategic locations that you think have the best long-term outlooks. You're not just like taking whatever the builders have or what you find on the market. So that's a
love
part
it.
of his view. Here is acquisitions by quarter for AMH, which Resi Club, we pull all the earnings and track this stuff in our data sets. Build to rent is this lighter red, and you
Okay.
can see that during the pandemic housing boom, the other traditional acquisition methods, they went way up, and then rates came down and they went way down, but they're still
Mhm.
moving the they're still doing the build to rent.
Love that.
Um, and so in Q1 2022, 35% of acquisitions were build to rent. Q1 2023, 96%, and
Mm,
Q1 this year, 96% were built to rent.
makes
So
sense.
and they're in 12 states, a lot out west: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee. I'm already saying I'm so I'll say them all: Utah and Washington.
I love that. I love that. Lance, you do amazing work. You have the data, you have the access, the experience. You give it to all of us to let us make our own decisions, which is so appreciated in today's world. Where do people go to get this good stuff?
Yeah. So if you want to go to resiclubanalytics.com, you could, as soon as you get to the site, you put in your email, you get signed up for my free newsletter. I also have additional product called Resi Club Pro. It's for my paying audience. You get more of the interviews with executives. You get a lot more data: 3,000 counties, 800 metros. I do zip code reports every once in a while for home prices, days on market, and inventory. And but if you don't want to become a paying member, I you still get a lot of good free content and
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're a part of one rental at a time, you at a minimum need to sign up, get the free version. There's so much value there. I read it every week. I actually like the pro because you get access to data that lets me understand my buy box at a level of detail that I can't get anywhere else. I will let you guys make that choice. Lance, you're amazing. Thanks for being here.
thank you for having me.